What due to experience do you know not to fudge with? Story 1. Take care of your teeth. I got a tooth infection from neglecting to fill a cavity. Not fun. Relentless, throbbing pain. And unfortunately, mine occurred on a Friday, and all the dentists in my area were closed for the weekend. Root canals, crowns, not a good time. Don't neglect dental care. I know most adults take care of their teeth, but to those who don't, especially if you're younger, visit your dentist. Brush your teeth, floss, use mouthwash, get your cleanings and fillings. Dental pain absolutely sucks and it's very costly. Answer: I was reading that Japan is working on substances that will regrow teeth. If that pans out, it will be one of the greatest medical breakthroughs ever. Once your teeth start failing, it's brutal and it snowballs. Root canals can fail and need to be redone or just be extracted anyways. Implants are so ridiculously expensive. If you can't afford that and go with dentures, it often fudge up the surrounding teeth anyways. Story 2. Trusting the earth at the edge of a cliff. Just because the ground looks secure from your vantage point does not mean that it truly is secure. It can crumble out from underneath you without warning, leaving you to drop hundreds of feet to your passing in front of your family, including young children. This happened to a girl I went to school with. They went on vacation, and her mother was standing at the edge looking over to take a photo or something. The ground gave way and my friend came back to school a completely different person. Bitter, meaner, self-destructive. It broke my heart for her. Answer: people die at the cliffs of Moher in Ireland on a fairly regular basis. We put up signs. People ignore them. We put up notices in the car parks about the deaths. People assume it was others being stupid, but they'll be fine if they go to the edge. We put up fences and guardrails. People clamber over them like toddlers trying to reach a knife on a kitchen counter. Story 3. Electricity. If you don't know what you're doing, just assume it's going to eliminate you and call a professional. Answer: I got shocked on accident by my mother while setting up Christmas lights. It was dark and wet outside and I got a really good shock that took me off my feet. My mother screamed and I was disoriented. My grandfather, who had been in the IBW for about 50 years around that time, just laughed and patted me on my back. I think he was in gloves, fudge with electricity now. Story 4. The ocean. I live near the ocean, the Pacific Ocean off Southern California to be precise, but the lesson is pretty universal to most large bodies of water. I have experience swimming in the ocean as an open water swimmer. I have experience sailing in the ocean and other recreational activities on the ocean. The ocean is not to be fudged with or taken lightly. The ocean has a power that is so overwhelmingly beyond a person's athleticism or competency that you have to think very carefully about whether to get into water when conditions are iffy. Currents, waves, water temperature, living things in the water from small microorganisms to larger animals, random things below the surface that may be rocks or other man-made objects or structures, other things like boats and jet skis are all sources of great danger. One propeller running over you is like a foot-long food processor across your body and will open you up and slice your major organs in a split second. Falling into the ocean from a boat that continues on its way will eliminate you through hypothermia and fatigue. A rogue wave can knock you down and crack your vertebrae. The ocean has so many means to eliminate you. It may not be malicious, but it is always capable. Just be really mindful and respect the ocean. Answer: a big, unexpected killer here in the UK is cold water shock. Some, certainly not all beaches here in the southwest or far reaches of Scotland honestly look like the Maldives throughout the year. All it takes is a teenager with a bit of Dutch courage and they can be in some serious shoot. The effects of CWS really aren't taught anywhere. This isn't even ocean water. It's just cold water in general. If you don't know how to combat it, you basically just need to use the 120 seconds you have to calm yourself as much as possible. You will regain control of your body again, ideally by rolling on your back and getting your breathing under control. When your body catches up with your brain, then you can get back to getting to shore. Hopefully somebody can call a lifeboat for you if it's a bit overwhelming. If you're in a riptide, swim parallel to the coast and arc back in a sort of L-shaped route back. Those 120 seconds are crucial though. If you don't calm down, you're going to continue to thrash and tire yourself out. Many die because of it here. Story 5. Railroad crossings. I saw a pickup try and gun it through a crossing in Georgia about 20 years ago. Made me realize how squishy cars and the people inside them are. Answer: by a similar token, stay behind the yellow line on the subway platform. Many people have committed tragic end by jumping in front of subway trains. When the train comes into the station, the driver seeing you on the yellow line has no way of knowing if you're about to jump. You can do a lot for the mental health of subway drivers by not making them question whether or not they're about to see you die right in front of them. Story 6. Sheep. I'll never go near one again. Fudge backed up, ran at me, knocked me flat on my back, and bitch slapped the glasses off my face with his giant ball sack. Never again. Story 7. Yellow jacket nest. As a kid, I put a hatchet in a tree stump not knowing it had yellow jackets. But the lesson is to hide in the car, and they came through the air vents to get me. Answer. Fuck that. I hit a nest one time while I was weed eating at my parents' house. Didn't realize that the nest was inside a landscape timber. My neighbor saw me running across the yard screaming and got the hose as quick as he could to get some off. My parents ended up calling an exterminator that evening, who was shocked that I didn't end up in the ER. Still took Benadryl and slept a day or so like you did. Fudge yellow jackets. Who seems perfectly lathes. I grew up during the shock sites era, and many, specifically the Russian lathe accident, have stuck with me forever. Heavy machinery doesn't give a fudge about our wet tissue strength bodies. When I ended up finding a job in a factory and getting put on a lathe, I was terrified. Trainer always got mad at me for stopping the machine, saying it slowed him down. I never got sucked into the fudge, though, in my 6 years, so I count that as a win. Answer. Disclaimer. I will try to remember what I can, but it has been a while since I was told the story. I will also do my best to answer any questions. Backstory. In around 2015, my dad had a machine fabrication shop in Latin America that dealt with the reconditioning of train wheels, among other things. This an open-air shop that had maybe a 40 FD metal roof above it that he had built from the ground up, the roof in the business. This was not his first experience with a lathe or heavy tooling at all, but just a near-devastating mistake, which he has since learned from and repeatedly drilled into me how to avoid it, not complaining. These wheels typically weighed about 2,500 kilograms, and after a while in service, they develop flat spots, chips, etc., and need to be repaired. This is done with a large lathe of sorts. The lathe that my dad used was a very old industrial lathe that he converted to Linux CNC and added a 50 HP electric motor for the chuck. The chuck itself was so heavy that you could not turn it by hand, but you needed a bar for leverage, like a chuck key, but not. I'm not sure how big the bar was, but it seems like it was maybe 5 or 6 feet long and weighed maybe 35-year-old milliamps. This happened relatively soon after the lathe was converted and a crew was hired. However, I do not know if a wheel was loaded at the time. He was testing the first few wheels himself to learn the correct practices and whatnot. It is also worth noting that he had a few employees working that day. This is important later on. Fun part. One day he is working with the lathe, using the bar to turn the chuck counterclockwise from the side opposite to the control panel. Then something happened that required him to step away from the machine. Doesn't remember. At this time, the bar is at its lowest point on the chuck, still engaged. Once he comes back to the machine on the control side, he fires up the lathe and immediately remembers, then ducks. Somehow, by the grace of God, the chuck was able to spin up quick enough that the bar dislodged from the chuck at around the 1230-11 position and flew through the 45th tee roof. Unfortunately, I am not sure what happened to the bar after the roof. However, the scariest part of this whole deal was the account of one of the employees who happened to be looking in the general direction of the lathe. He generally said that by the time my dad had ducked, the bar had already exited the ceiling and that he truly had no time to react. This event, among others, is why my dad considers himself to be the best possible outcome, and I 100 agree. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Don't leave the key in the chuck. Story 9. Organophosphate poison. Gloves, mask, eye protection, long sleeves, and pants. Don't get it on your skin. And for the love of God, keep it away from your eyes and mouth. Also, when refilling containers where you need to mix the concentrate with water, add the water first. And use a hose with a nozzle at a low pressure spray. Never trust a rusty spigot. I don't think I need to explain the lesson I learned with that explanation. Poison first. Water from a rusty spigot that turned on too fast. Poison straight to the eyes and mouth. Poison control told me not to panic and that I wouldn't have to go to the hospital unless I had severe symptoms. Well, 2 days later, the symptoms came, and I was due for a shot of atropine. Full symptoms of SLUDGE. I couldn't venture far from the bathroom, and everything was coming out of everywhere until what was coming out ended up being blood. Literally dying, heart palpitations, syncope, the whole nine. Every bad symptom you can find online, I got it. I've never felt so horrible in my life. After the atropine, I was on the strongest antacid they could give me because I had a severe ulcer that had to be monitored for a few days to make sure I didn't bleed out internally. It took almost a full year for my stomach to recover, and I lost 40 lb within 3 weeks. I couldn't eat anything besides plain white rice or mashed potatoes, and even those came up sometimes. It was 9 months before I could tolerate chicken broth, then eggs. I was extremely malnourished, easily the worst year of my life. And since that stuff is super carcinogenic, my fight with it probably isn't over. I just don't know it yet. Story 10. The sea or any large open body of water, TBH. Had a few experiences when it seemed calm but turned pretty suddenly, and the feeling of helplessness in vast expanse is terrifying. Story 11. No matter how much my ego tries to convince me otherwise, I will never fudge with guys with cauliflowered ears and calloused knuckles. Answer, this. Also, I would like to add, just don't fudge with anyone. You never know. I've been training for 21 years now and have seen all types of people in there. Some with cauliflower ears, some without. Some quit fast, some stay forever. Some people have too much of an ego and will go out to their car, grab a gun, and come shoot you in the back after you won. Don't fight unless you have to defend yourself. Story 12. You ever meet someone who seems perfectly pleasant and unobjectionable, but the more you talk to them, the more you notice a faint stirring of dread or unease uncoiling in your stomach or chest, and you don't know why? Just find a way to excuse yourself politely and then stay out of their way. That's your subconscious mind picking up on danger cues. Your polite conscious mind has been taught to ignore. When people say listen to your gut, this is what they mean. Answer, yup, pup, this was my last relationship. On paper, he was treating me extremely well, was in therapy, seemed incredibly kind and self-aware, but something in me was just very uneasy around him. I remember texting my therapist, why does this man being intentional with me make me feel like he's going to take down me? 7 months in after we moved in together, the mask fell off. Should have walked away that first week when I wanted to. Spoiler, I was not takedown. Story 13. Old ceiling fans. One was wired wrong and I touched it. Never had my arm involuntarily punch me in the face before. So yeah, I don't fudge with fans. Story 14. Speeding during a turn in the pouring rain while driving on bald tires. I ended up spinning several times, came to a stop on the side of the road, facing in the wrong direction. If I had went 6 inches further to the left, I would have went off a cliff. Story 15. If you're ever asked by your SO if you think any of their friends are attractive, don't say anything. I mean nothing. Don't even think of anything. Story 16. Any stuck tool. If a saw, a knife, a wrench, any tool is stuck, you have no idea how much energy is stored in there. Back away and find a slow, safe way to release it. Source. Being a stupid teenager leaning to use a chainsaw, table saw, do car maintenance and repair, whittling, house repair, etc. Story 17. If it's really pretty, really ugly, or doesn't move away from you, don't touch it. Wisdom I used to teach in scuba diving courses actually works well in general life too. Story 18. Dogs, I don't care how friendly the owner says they are, how peaceful they are acting, etc. Do not touch an animal you do not know. Now, generally animals like me. However, about 3 years ago, my neighbors had a dog named Bear. Bear was clearly uncomfortable at the fence line, barking, jumping, etc. The owner was a sweetheart and insisted he would be okay if I gave him a treat. She pressed one into my hand, and I cautiously handed it over. Dog jumped and nearly took my darn hand off. Now I'm not mad at the dog. Here's this stranger that it doesn't know reaching over and into its territory. Treat or not, its owner's also right there. Maybe I used the wrong cologne that day. You don't know what's going on in the mind of an animal. Like I said, I'm not mad at Bear. Bear was simply doing his job, but I promptly told my family not to even try it. I'm still a tough old bird, and I can take a few bites, but my then 10-year-old couldn't. So just leave strange animals alone, no matter how much their owner protests. It's safest for everyone. Story 19. Not wearing a helmet when riding a bike. The one time I forgot is the one time my back brakes failed, and I ended up hitting the curb, flipping face first over the front, reflexively covering my face but rolling in a way that I hit the back of my head really hard and then skidding 6 feet across the sidewalk. This was only a few years ago, and I have the scar to remind me not to fudge around with personal safety. Story 20. An entitled parent. Some parents really don't know how to look after their kids and blame other people when their kid destroys something or hurts themselves. I learned not to argue with these dumbasses. It's a losing battle. Story 21. I've been in federal prison. Do not fudge with the feds, especially the prosecutors. They are not like state prosecutors. They have unlimited money to fudge with you. Answer: a good friend is a top-level federal prosecutor. They sit on your network patiently with resources that capture every freaking breath you take. When the bracelets go on, you're cooked. They don't lose. In many substances cases, everyone is rounded up. Mom-in-law, uncle, auntie, grandma, niece, sister, friend. They all probably had some connection to benefited from the relationship. They say, here's this deal, or you can risk all of them eating shoot and doing fed time. Story 22. Strangers. You never know who is carrying or what kind of baggage they're carrying. You might bump into someone or they bump into you and you want to curse them out. Don't. You can be pissed, but try to de-escalate. It's never worth it to rage at them or argue with them or whatever. I knew a homeless kid in Philadelphia who didn't drink or do substances. He would sometimes be annoying and question you a lot, almost like he was interrogating you or acting like your therapist. He meant well. He was only 22 when one night he argued with someone, allegedly, and then the guy shot him in the back multiple times and eliminated him. Fudge shame. I'm not blaming him for getting shot, but unless you know someone very well, you never know if they're going to go from 0-100. Just be cautious is all. So I've learned to not be antagonizing to people I don't know well, even for people I do know. You just can't know how they'll react. Most of the time it's probably fine, but there's always that time that could be your last. Plus, it's just better to be nicer to people in general anyway. Story 23. Blood pressure. If it's high, that's your check engine light, and you can buy a new cardiovascular system. Story 24. Substances. I started experimenting at 13, and I quickly became an addict. I have gotten clean many times, and I've relapsed many times. Because of my addiction, I strained my relationships with my family, and I ruined a lot of good things for myself. Today, I'm 29 days sober. I'm extremely determined to make sobriety stick this time. My advice, don't do substances. You'll end up feeling horrible, losing everything, and being trapped in a cycle that you don't want to be in. Trust me. Story 25. People who decide you're great friends when you barely know them. It doesn't bode well in my experience, which culminated in them getting a 3-year restraining order and sectioned. We're both female, and it wasn't an intimacy thing. She was just incredibly unwell. Story 26. Carrying an unpaid credit card balance into the next billing cycle. Ended up almost $100,000 in debt. Cut out every unnecessary. You up quick. I have it and got it paid off. Never again. Story 27. Office admins. They know every single thing that's happening at the office. Who's getting promoted, who's getting fired, and who's sleeping with who. They also control all the office get-togethers, the seating chart, the schedule of the leads, and they have the ear of the leadership team. They have way more power than anyone realizes. Sure, the leadership team is theoretically in charge, but piss off your admin, and you'll quickly find out who actually runs the place. Story 28. Any short guy who wants to fight. More often than not, they are Wolverines with a driver's license. They bring all the bullying and jokes and rejection from childhood and will take it out on you. Story 29. I live in Australia and I can assure you I have learned not to fudge. Unplugged it and opened them. You can end up dead very quickly. Story 30. The law. Cops have zero incentive to serve the public, do the right thing, promote and preserve any public image, or not sink into toxic cop culture. Where I live, cops get PTO when they eliminate someone, thusly incentivizing them to eliminate someone. What the actual F? Story 31. Back in 70s, my dad was playing TV repairman with our big console. He unplugged it and opened the back. He didn't know that the metal plate on the right side was a capacitor plate. We heard a bang, and I went into the living room to find lying on the living floor, his face all gray. I asked what happened, and he just said, "Leave me alone." But he didn't do that again. Story 32. Falling kitchen knife. Do not try and catch it. Jump back away from it and let it fall to the floor. Story 33. Flooded roads. Do not drive across them. You do not know how deep that water is, how fast it's moving, or whether the road surface is still there underneath it. Story 34. This is random, but I don't let my purse or wallet out of my sight around my family or their friends because the people I should be able to trust have betrayed that multiple times by adding my credit card info to their digital wallet or Uber accounts, and they put the card back. So by the time I notice my credit card has been maxed out, it's too late for damage control. Moral of the story, I only trust my dog, really. Humans are shady as hell, and I'm far too ADHD to be changing my credit card info and auto payments around. Story 35. Things that work. Went on a 4-4 trip and noticed my drive belt was loose, so tightened it a little, and it snapped after another half hour of driving. Made to MacGyver my way home. If it's working, don't fudge with it until you're out of the chute. Story 36. HR. I know a guy that refers to them as Human Remains Department. They definitely do not give a shoot about you, so never engage if you can avoid it, and lie to them if you need to. They're bad people. Story 37. Whitewater. You think it looks cool, is very fun to ride on, but even professionals with ton of experience die in it every year. I'm one of them. I love it. Thread it with respect and caution. Story 38. Crazy. I learned from hard experience not to fudge with crazy, including anger problems. My first ex was fine at the start, but refused to address his increasingly bad anger issues. And for you guys out there, don't stick your male body part in crazy either. I keep saying this to a guy friend of mine. He doesn't seem to believe me. Story 39. I'm a cook. I'm lucky enough to have a pretty wide range of experience, however little, and we use a lot of machines that'll fudge you up quick. I have a healthy and deep respect for deep fryers, gas ovens, steam kettles, broilers, griddles, Ansel systems, smokers, industrial mixers, stand, barrel, buffalo, band saws, deli slicers, vacuum sealers, the list goes on. I do not fudge with a mandolin without a glove or guard. Fucking widowmaker she is. Story 40. Someone else's phobias. I put a very close friend into a full-blown panic attack because I thought it would be funny to play a clown prank on her. Well, let's just say, although it was a good prank, it went horribly wrong, and she shut down, like crying hysterically and shutting herself in the bathroom for hours. We were at work. I can't think of many times I have felt worse about my own behavior than that. I will never purposely fudge with anyone's phobias again. Answer. I worked for a company that had a manager leaving for a new job, and she did not like the sound of potato chip bags being opened, used, or touched. Some genius thought it would be funny if on her last day, we all crinkled a potato chip bag. She recoiled, and we all laughed. I went into her office afterward and asked if she thought it was funny, and she did not. It was then and there I learned that pranking someone with their fears or phobias is not funny. In fact, I don't even laugh when I see that on Fail Army. It's not funny. That kind of toxic behavior at that company is probably why she left. Story 41. Smoking. Having watched my mother slowly succumb to the ravages of smoking, made sure I'll never have phobias. I put a very anything adjacent live apps or choose. Story 42. Listen to my inner voice. Anytime I've overridden it with headstrong rationalism or reckless disregard, it has not gone as hoped. Do not ignore my own gut feelings. Do not fudge with natural law or cats. They will cut a meanie. And Carla Olive, 8th. Same reason. Answer. I've heard enough stories about what happens when people ignore their gut feelings. Had one this morning when I was out running. Normally do 2 5-kilometer loops, but on the first I had a weird interaction with a woman in an alleyway, and then at the end of it, there was a sketchy-looking dude just standing there. My inner voice told me to GTFO, change my course, went to the other side of the road and completely noped out of doing the second lap. Almost certainly the two people being in the same place was a coincidence, and the guy was just waiting for someone. But even if the probability of bad times is very low, it's the seriousness of the possible consequences that makes it not worth the gamble. Story 43. Someone who's already shown a number of red flags. Enough stories about what does not outweigh the reality of what you're being shown. Story 44. Credit. Not caring or not paying hospital bills, late payments, debts, loans payments in my early 20s. I really didn't think it mattered, but when you want to do adult things like getting a house, car, or loan, it's the first thing they look at. Story 45. Substances and adult beverage. I started off with 2 to 3 beers after work to calm my nerves. After experiencing a miscarriage, that snowballed into 12 to 20 drinks a night just to avoid a seizure. Went to rehab, met a guy there, and thought it would be a great idea to start dating him. He introduced me to the wonderful world of substances. Within a year's time, I went from drinking a little too often to smoking an 8-ball of crack daily, shooting meth, and still plowing through a couple 6-packs every day. Multiple relapses taught me I really can't fudge around, or I will find out. A glass of champagne at a wedding can, and will have me selling my body for dope again within a month. Now I'm stone cold sober. I rekindled a relationship with my teenage sweetheart and recently found out I'm 8 weeks pregnant with my rainbow baby. My life now is 100x better than any high I ever had. Story 46. Welding. Worked at an ophthalmologist's office, and too many patients came in with metal in the eye, some so far deep in the cornea that there were limited options on treatment. I care about my eyes way too much. Story 47. Canadian geese, especially ones with babies nearby. Those fuckers are mean, and they do not give a fudge. They'll hiss at you, drop their heads down and chase after you. You don't fudge with the cobra chickens. Story 48. Cactus that look smooth. Some of them have tiny hairs that hurt as much as the thorny cactus. Those are much harder to remove. Can't remove what you can't see or barely see. Story 49. Snow. You can't. I dated that guy and you can only get warmer yourself or get tipsy so you don't freeze. Answer. And for those under the impression drinking will make you warmer, I'm not sure if I interpreted your last words right or wrong. It's a lot like wetting your pants to feel warm. In cold conditions, your body constricts blood vessels in the areas that are losing heat the fastest in an effort to keep your core and brain temperature at a level where you remain functional. This often includes your face. Adult beverage dilates those vessels, resulting in both. You want one, a very pleasant feeling of warmth, and two, a considerable increase in losing your body heat. Offering someone with mild hypothermia some adult beverage is like nudging them towards passing. Story 50. Never drive drowsy. It sounds like a no-brainer, but I bet more do it than you'd think. Whether it's lack of sleep, stress, medication, or your commute is so boring or long it gives highway hypnosis, don't do it. I had all of those factors one morning on the way to work. Coffee wasn't enough to stave it off. As I got on an exit ramp, the next thing I knew, my passenger side door scraped into the metal road barrier, and the slight impact and noise jolted me back awake. Based on the position of where I was at that point, I may have yet lost consciousness for half a second from when I last remembered. That half second could have eliminated someone else and or me. I make sure I'm properly rested before driving, and on long car trips, I split the drive time with my spouse. Story 51. Someone who is emotionally unstable used to be attracted to the crazy, and then it started making me so. Story 52. People everyone else love. Nope. I dated that guy and he was a monster and none of those people knew it. Just me. Story 53. Rail crossings. I drive a locomotive at a closed yard. I won't WV or try to beat the arms down. Yeah, they're typically low speed, but it doesn't stop as fast as you think it does. Even with dumping my air, it slides farther than you think. Critical mass has the right of way. Story 54. Gas lines. A job supervisor had a hissy fit about a missed pipe. I had never seen a copper line inside of cast iron and haven't since. He's screaming about how it's just a water line, so I cut the darn thing and almost took out the building and probably a dozen guys. Trust but verify. Story 55. Anything you are forcing your way into. If you have to force something to work out, it's not for you. Big financial decisions and relationships come easily or I'll walk away. Story 56. I have 2 rules from experience. Do not sleep with roommates and do not sleep with roommates' family. Story 57. Velvet ants. Picked one up because it looked like a neat, fuzzy big ant. Well, it's got a big and mighty painful stinger. It stabs it in deep and more than once. Wow, the worst sting I've ever felt in my life. Story 58. Electricity hands down. Was doing a remodel for a restaurant and went to cap off a water pipe so the joint didn't flood. Ended up copping 200 to investigate up the arm. I refuse to even breathe near electricity anymore. Story 59. Men who are racist and dislike the world, if they resent innocent people, guess what? They'll resent you too, and then blames you for them. Whoopsie, abusing you and kids and animals and anything under the same roof. Story 60. Windows. They are very dangerous, especially in Russia, so it seems, as a lot of people fall out of them. Story 61. Wallpaper. If it ain't already falling off, do not try to remove that chute. Just seal it and wallpaper over top. You'll spend days and days with a steamer scraping it off, and 9 times out of 10, the wall underneath is too fudge to paint without a skim. Story 62. High-tension steel cables. Nobody was hurt, luckily, but at work we had one that held an antenna in place. The concrete it was bolted into just decided to fail, and it cut through a car, a chain-link fence, and embedded itself in a tree. No thanks. Story 63. Wearing shorts or not wearing a helmet skateboarding. I fell grinding, and my entire leg was thick scabs for 4 weeks. My foot was so swollen I couldn't put a flip-flop on and went barefoot. Daily would crack all over, puss and drip blood. It was a rough old park. I banana peeled doing a fast trick with no helmet and hit my head really hard. Always wear your helmet, people. Story 64. If you feel something is off and you feel it in your gut, trust it. I didn't, and a loved one has suffered for it. Story 65. Deadlines. High school and college teachers who are lenient reinforce that deadlines don't matter. Legit, you miss a deadline in this economy and it could be your job. Miss a payment on a credit card and ruin your credit. Miss a flight and lose thousands of dollars. It is critical that you be able to evaluate and determine the amount of time things take and make deadlines. In real life, you will face very significant consequences to miss deadlines. Story 66. People looking for fights, don't know anything about them and don't want to deal with the the consequences of winning or losing. Story 67. The ocean, even if you're familiar with it and grew up near it, don't fudge with it. You might think you know how to swim and that you know how to keep calm and read the situation, but you could end up 2 miles in from a random beach in a matter of minutes due to currents. Thank the universe there was someone with a boat nearby. Paper bag. In 8, newly divorced dads, broken, with a great desire to prove they are not. Let them have about a year of miles under them before you give them a shot. Probably applies to moms, too. But I don't date them. What? They'll resent you. Sleep deprivation. I battled high blood pressure for years thinking it was just genetics and shoot diet. I worked 15 years in a field requiring a totally fudge-up sleep rhythm, maybe a couple hours of rest, but not actual body healing, restorative sleep. Some nights of no sleep at all, then go out cold for 10 or 12 hours straight in the middle of the day. A career change later, and my blood pressure is normal again without medication. Same fudge diet. Story 70. Digging holes deeper than about 3 or 4 feet on the beach can eliminate a full-grown adult and or multiple children. This is also true where there are sand dunes that hang over an area. Happens way more often than it should. Multiple times a year. Story 71. Bit of a niche one, but theme park ride safety used to run a top spin, one of those ones where there's a row of like 20 seats with a giant arm on each end, and the whole thing flips in a big circle while the gondola itself also flips repeatedly. Relatively small ride by operation standards. One day a little kid got through an employees only door and made it into my ride area while the ride was moving. Could have very easily been disastrous had I not been paying attention. Was still one of the scariest moments of my life. I will go the fudge off on anyone who treats ride safety like a joke. Politely, but still. Lecture mode instantly activated. Story 72. Walking on frozen sea. It's an amazing experience to walk on the sea during winter where I live, but there are part of the sea where ice cover is thinner due to currents or boat lanes. Too many people downing because they take it too lightly. Story 73. So my buddy and I were walking back from fishing when we ran into a massive herd of cows blocking the road. All of them glaring at us like we'd insulted their ancestors. The bell cow looked ready to throw hands. We thought we'd be smart and go around through the forest. Big mistake. A few seconds in, my friend suddenly takes off sprinting. I turn around and realizes that the entire herd is stampeding after us. I tripped, fell, scrambled up again, face planted at least 3 times while running for my life. Thankfully, they didn't trample us, but they chased us all the way to the electric fence like they were auditioning for Fast Furious. Cow drift. Safe to say, I no longer trust cows. Fudge cows. Story 74. Open water is not to mess with. Had an emergency on rivers and in the sea 3 times in my life. Now I am active in sailing and always make sure that life vest and lifeline is there when appropriate. Story 75. Anything plumbing related. I know how to do basics, but it always turns into a 6 trips to the hardware store nightmare. Story 76. Helping bigots understand. They don't care about anyone. If they think some people are worth less or inhuman, they can't be helped. They're not the kind of mentally ill that can be helped with medication or therapy because they don't think they have a problem. They are dangerous people. I drop them immediately. Story 77. Heidi. Narcissists often double as sociopaths. Among the profiles that aren't yet acknowledged as hazards for society and therefore left free to do harm in total impunity, they're some of the most dangerous personas you may cross in real life and have to deal with even if you didn't want to. If they smell they have predator-like features, that they cannot fool you about their true personality, they'll see you as a threat. They don't want to be exposed and therefore do everything they can to destroy you, provoke you, talk you down, frame you, play victim, ruin your reputation, harass you. Lots of such toxic PPL are likely to be met in a work environment or within families like the classic gaslighting parent. It takes a kind of learning curve to know how to spot and efficiently stay away from such bad people. And PPL should be especially mindful to avoid voting them as leaders of their own country. Story 78. People with no morals. If they will steal or hurt or talk shoddy or any other BS to someone else, they will absolutely do it to you. Story 79. Don't fudge with the people who have access to your credit card. I used to work overnight at a hotel. Lots and lots of assholes and really entitled people came through. If you were a dickhead to me, I would simply put a hold on your credit debit card for $1,000 and move on. It wasn't permanent, but it typically took a couple days for the bank to reverse it. Just enough time to ruin your chances of getting an Uber, making your flight, etc. I've grown as a person, but I don't regret doing it whatsoever. Be nice to survey workers, y'all. Story 80. Road rage. Driving is a privilege insurance is expensive, and you can just choose to not care that someone else is driving like a jerk. See where ice... In the Navy, I learned never to fudge with people who handle your food, people who handle your pay, people who handle your medical records. Story 82. Substances and adult beverage. Just don't. And if you're a woman, men, no matter how savvy you think you are, you need to keep your guard up. Protect your safety, even, maybe especially, around the ones you think you can trust the most. You're most likely to be harmed by a man inside your own home, by one you've invited in, than in some dark alley. Combining the two is the worst thing you can do. If you get fudge up around men, your chances of being hurt or assaulted increase exponentially. Story 83. Mixing meds, even something as simple as Tylenol and supplements or a muscle relaxer and your anxiety meds. Story 84. Finding out that every first responder, EM, paramedics, firefighters, police, and nurses all sleep with each other. So always wear a rubber when banging these nurses. Story 85. Psychopaths, sociopaths, malignant narcissists. Oh, so charming. Often, and oh so damaging. Have learned to spot them a mile away and they stay out of their orbit completely. No good comes from being their next victim. Story 86. Someone who says that they want to leave their partner for you because they love you more than they ever thought they could love anyone. Story 87. Dating someone with a history of cheating, LOL, no matter how much time a person takes to themselves, therapy, no dating, etc. Once a cheater, always a cheater, and will cheat again. It's not about stopping for them. It's about how much better they can get at doing it without being caught. Story 88. Stress. Stress can make you ill in ways you'd never imagined, and if you're very unlucky, even eliminate you. I'm serious. Ditch the toxic parent friend. Get a less stressful job if you can. Don't overdo it with workouts, food, and so on, but also don't underdo it. A marathon isn't healthy. Never working out isn't healthy either. Do everything in moderation and try to not punish yourself for off days. Humans need breaks, whether you like it or not. Stress can eliminate. Story 89. Bored basement dwelling Reddit moderators. You'd think the position, LOL, would come with some restraint, but oh no, they can be unhinged. Story 90. The justice system, county, state, federal, any attempt to stay out will save you years of stress, depression, drama, and money. Story 91. Hot sauces that are intended to be as hot as possible and use how hot they are as part of their marketing. Story 92. The IRS, not firsthand, but to be harmed by a man inside I knew well. They do not quit, nor do they forget. Story 93. Power tools, PTOs, and air tools. That saw, it doesn't give a darn if it's cutting wood or meat, boys. If you aren't comfortable, confident, and respectful of the power you're working with, it will ruin you. That spinning shaft running a post hole digger, you fudge around with that and you're going to learn the full medical definition of degloving. That airless paint sprayer you rented from Home Depot, the paint can come out of that nozzle at thousands of PSI and it will cut into your skin and immediately infect the cut. You're almost guaranteed sepsis, gangrene, or toxic shock unless you get immediate medical attention. Story 94. Executive assistants. Get the assistants offside and your work life will be hell. They can be a power-tripping meanie that you want to shank in the parking lot, but you smile and be friendly and grovel at their feet. Story 95. Flowing water. Most people drown in less than 3 feet deep. If it's flowing fast, don't mess with it. Also, anyone who quickly lets you know how religious or God-fearing they are. Every one of those turned out to be the absolute worst of people. Story 96. The guy on the end of my block drinking wine from a paper bag. In hindsight, asking him if he is having a good day was a mistake. Story 97. The boom on a sailboat, even the tiny racing dinghy ones. Yes, it's super easy to move and might not even weigh much with the sails down. That boom will take you out like a 10F Babe Ruth hitting over the fence as it swings when the wind hits the sail. Had a kid from sailing camp die because they were goofing around and the kid on the rudder didn't call out that he was turning. Boom to the back of the skull. He was comatose by the time he got to the hospital and dead not long after. I met someone else who spent 4 years relearning how to walk and talk after a similar accident, had several brain surgeries, was kept heavily sedated for a long time to manage brain swelling, and then got the joy of having to learn everything you do growing up but 20x slower. Story 98. Electricity, ladders, chainsaws, angle grinders. Treat each with respect and you'll live long and improve your chances of keeping all your blood new. Where I go, painting all your extremities and digits and eyes. Story 99. Anything pressurized. I was enlisted air crew on transport aircraft, and I've seen guys lose fingers. Always a cheater, and will even eliminate by high pressure, hydraulic, and pneumatic systems. Story 100. If you live in China, fake adult beverage. Unsure if it's just as much a thing as when I lived there a decade ago, but woof, will that fudge you up bad. Story 101. The ocean, namely the undertow of the ocean. Growing up in Nova Scotia, we frequented many beaches growing up. I was pulled into the undertow when I was maybe 6 years old. I was dragged quite a ways out into the bay. I've had a very healthy fear of the ocean ever since. Story 102. God darn geese. My friend and I were at a farm and we wanted to see the horses. She boosted me over the fence and climbed over herself. We were about to go over the first fence and heard a hiss. These motherfuckers were in a squad, wings outreached and charging towards us like demon spawn from hell. I never jumped over a gate so fast in my life. And my friend too. Stairs. Falling down stairs is dangerous. You could die. Hold the darn rail every time. I've fallen down the stairs twice, never again. I don't care if it's not cool to hold the rail. Hold it. Using a body-unsafe intimacy toy. I got a toy that was called Real Skin, a dildo, and by God, I got the worst UTI imaginable. And it turned into a bladder infection, which was agonizing. Never get a cheaply made intimacy toy and always make sure you're using high-quality silicone, glass, wood, etc. Lelo has gold high-quality toys. Protect your genitals. Electricity. Got a nasty shock from forcing a plug into an outlet when it should not have been forced. Story 103. The Icelandic wind. If you see an outcrop on a mountain hike and it looks like it'd be cool to go out on it and look around, don't do that. The wind will pick you up like you weigh nothing. I almost died. Story 104. I was going to say no parking tow away zone signs, but after reading some of the comments that seems lame. Story 105. An adult man has no reason to communicate with a teenage girl. In my teens, I was followed into a store and asked a bunch of questions. My name, age, if my hair was natural, if I got piercings, etc. I hung around the cashiers as they saw the conversation happening. Turned out later on there were people in town part of a human trafficking ring, and the person I described was one of them. Story 106. Baby deer. I was trampled by one when I was about 6 or 7 at a wildlife park. A bunch of kids had surrounded one, and I was curious what everyone was looking at. As soon as I walked up and saw they had trapped a distressed baby deer, I knew it was bad news, but it was already too late. I was what snapped Bambi's little rubber band, and the thing decided I was the path to freedom. It reared up and high-keebed me in the sternum with its sharp little hooves, and down I went. I had 2 perfect hoof print-shaped bruises on my chest for weeks afterward. First time I ever had the wind knocked out of me too. It sucked. Story 107. Men who are insecure had this controlling ex who literally wanted to control everything in my life, who I talk to, where I go, who my friends must be. He was just too much. And unfortunately, I realized everything after we broke up. And from then I promised myself to see the signs early and will never date someone like that ever again. Story 108. Lions are scary as fudge. Even retired old lions that seem like they are one puff away from passing are scary as fudge. And the sound they make when they are just talking, not roaring, just chatting with the friends. Fudge hits you in the heart and the spine. No speaker can come close to duplicating the sheer power they have in their voice. My experience. Went to a retired big cat sanctuary, lions and tigers and other big cats. They have 3-meter-high fences and a separation fence that's 1 meter from the pen and 1 meter high. Guide tells you that the fences are a false sense of security for the humans. Lion won out. It gets out. The theory, why burn calories when food is delivered to you? So they all seem docile, and then they speak. I tell you, they seem calm. But there is no Iwimba way shoot happening there. They are all looking for a reason to be fudge with. Never fudge with lions. Story 109. Bongs, especially in a car. If that shoot somehow drops and it hasn't been recoed since the day it was bought, come. Story 110. Never, ever, ever turn your back to the ocean. People can get slammed in less than a meter of water, and ocean waves, wet-packed sand can easily eliminate you. Story 111. The sea, cliffs, confined spaces. These things will eliminate you, so fudge quick if you fudge about. Be very, very careful. Story 112. The sun. Even under cloud cover you can burn. It will damage your skin, can damage your eyes, and will visibly age you over time. Sunscreen, a hat, and really good sunglasses every time you're out in it. Story 113. Haven't seen this yet, but allergies. May seem simple, but you'll encounter people who just don't believe you. I have a severe anaphylactic nut allergy. Even a cross-contamination can send me to the hospital if I'm not careful. So no. And not just being fussy or picky when I won't eat the cake you bought at the store. If I'm not careful, it could literally eliminate me in minutes. Story 114. If you see something washed up on a beach and think, I don't know what that is, I should poke it with a stick, don't. It could be a jellyfish and they can still sting. It felt like a massive gash down the side of my face, and if it was only a couple of some away, I would have been blinded in one eye. Story 115. Back in college in a calculus finals exam, the graph that my math calculations suggested seemed off to my naked eye, so I tried to bring my calculations to represent what I taught should the graph look like, but turns out I completely fed up in my imaginary graph. Since that day, I never questioned the outcome if math is within. Story 116. Electricity. Got shocked by exposed live wires as a kid. Felt like my entire body just jumped on its own. Story 117. Any body of water. I learned to swim as an adult, and so most of my life I was wary of water. Now I'm comfortable swimming in the ocean and rivers, but I really take my time when getting into water to assess my surroundings and the current before getting in. I also am an IQ Air nurse and have seen my fair share of drownings and near misses, so I feel confident saying that it doesn't matter how strong a swimmer you are, the water gives no fudge about you and will mess your life up in an instant. Story 118. As a very small child, I was playing with my baby doll and trying to feed her. I wanted a bottle that went down and then made her wet out of the bottom. I didn't know you needed a different doll altogether to accomplish this. So what I did was I took my shoestring out of my shoe and I put one end in her mouth. I put the other end in the wall socket briefly, very briefly. I will never forget that shock or the feeling in my tongue or along my arms and to the tips of my middle fingers. I was under the age of 5, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And to this day, I still don't mess around with electricity because that shoot will eliminate your jerk fast. Electricians are magic, and I don't even like shaking their hands. This is a childhood fear at its finest because it keeps me safe and unfried. Story 119. Anything with stored energy, like springs in car suspension, pressure vessels, garage door springs, etc. Story 120. Cars, they win every time. It does not matter if you have the right of way. The laws of physics degaff about the laws of people. It doesn't matter if you're in a crosswalk. The ton of metal will always win against your sack of flesh, and regardless of who the law says was at fault, you are going to be unhappy with the outcome. So buckle up, look both ways, stay vigilant, and never assume. Story 121. Diet pills. My ex-wife took Phenermine for a year. The purpose of the pill was she would eat an apple or some almonds in the morning, take her dosage. But it changed the chemical composition of her brain to convince her she just ate a buffet's worth of food. Unfortunately, it led to a deep psychosis mental breakdown and put her into an institution for almost a month. Story 122. Adult beverage. My dad and his dad and his dad were addicts. Tried drinking, tried plant substance. It's all fun and games until you realize because of your genetics, you're playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun. 4 years later, and the hardest substance I put in my body is coffee. Story 123. 3 things. 1, don't start shoot with a guy with cauliflower ear to secure from your vanagilus. 3, don't date ER nurses. Story 124. Icy stairs. Wiped out hard carrying my 3-year-old son down our front stairs after some freezing rain. I knew they had a film of ice on them and thought I'd braced myself well enough, but nope, completely wiped out in an instant. And because of the instinctual reaction to protect cradle my son, didn't even attempt to catch myself. Bruised by tailbone, twisted the metal bracelet right off a 2.500 watch and fractured my thumb. I slipped and fell 2 other times on icy sidewalks that same winter. Never before in my life had I worried about that shoot. Now I always make sure to watch my step. Story 125. Threatening to sue somebody, especially if that person has more financial resources than you. Even if you are 100 in your truth. Justice in America is a myth that helps people sleep. Story 126. Being in a relationship with an addict, supposedly in recovery at the beginning of the relationship. 5 years of pure hell until I finally got help and got out. Never again. Story 127. Talking to police, FBI. My company was once investigated and I agreed to talk to them. Don't ever talk to police. They're not your friends. They will trick you to get what they want. Story 128. There's really only one true answer, and that is the universe. You better make sure your intentions are good cause. If not, the universe will create the perfect scenario in which to serve you your karma. It's simply perfect in that regard. Flawless. Everything in moderation. Story 129. The ocean. I've been going for 19 years of my life during the summers, and riptides are no joke. But TBH, you don't even need riptides. If the waves are big enough, you can easily get trapped by just swimming a little too far. It gets exhausting going under a wave just to surface and have to go under another wave right away. You gotta learn to respect it, or else you will drown. Story 130. Cocaine and fentanyl. I'm curious, but I think I'm one of those people that is prone to addictive behaviors. Addiction to coffee and sugar? Fine, my dentist, PCP, and I will sort out the aftermath. Addiction to cocaine? Probably laced with fentanyl. Addiction to fentanyl? Probably deadly at some point. No thanks, I'm good. Story 131. Lawnmowers, any spinning blade really, went to unclog the grass chute when I was a kid. Thought the blade was off. It was not. People always ask if it hurt. I never felt it, but I certainly heard it. Docs reattached it. Always fun to show people the finger I got cut off, because I get to flip the off at the same time. I still can't understand people who mow the lawn in flip-flops. Story 132. Leaving a drink unattended or letting someone you don't know very well pour you a drink. Learned the hard way not to trust someone that I thought was cool with my drink. Story 133. Overdraft fees, it is literally life-ruining, and the concept of if you are broke, we will charge you will never not blow my mind. I was 19 and put myself over 1,000 in the red at times because I couldn't afford to live, and it was hell. Story 134. Do not fudge with electricity if you don't know exactly what you are doing. I am an electrical engineer who has worked professionally with very high voltages. Those of us who are properly trained have techniques and tricks to keep from eliminate ourselves. Even if you are an EE, unless someone has trained you on this stuff, you don't know what to do. If you do this at home, even like trying to wire in a fixture or change an outlet, you can set up a deadly situation. 110V can be quite fatal. In case you're curious, here is one trick so you get the idea. When you deal with over 1,000 volts, you turn off the power. Then you discharge circuitry with a grounding stick. Then you ground everything. And finally, before you touch anything, you whack it fast with the back of your hand. Why? High voltage makes your hand spasm shut. If you grab it the normal way, your hand will be glued to the wire. If you snap it fast with your backside of a fingertip, the spasm will move you away from TLW wire. Story 135. Your body. If something feels odd, please get it checked. I thought I was just tired, and my primary care doc told me that I was anemic, and that was extremely common for women. So I ignored it until my hemoglobin dropped so low that I had to go get a blood transfusion in the ER, where they insisted on doing a full endoscopy and colonoscopy. Thank God, found a tumor, then did a CT, and found masses in my lungs and liver. Stage 4 colon cancer. I'm only 38. I was diagnosed almost 3 years ago and have been on chemo ever since. I wish I had paid more attention to my body and my habits. Story 136. Aspirin. I suffer from chronic pain from multiple conditions, and it's the only substances that helps with my pain without giving me awful side effects. One particularly bad day, I accidentally took 2 doses a little too close together. I ended up with the most foul-smelling diarrhea I've ever had. It was so bad that I ended up learning that I can